Welcome to Improv Your Parenting, the art of turning parenting into play. Today we are joined by Benjamin Lloyd, who runs bxlloyd Consulting, a learning and development practice that uses the power of play and applied improvisation to support extraordinary teams, groups, and communities. He also continues to work creatively with people of all abilities, develop and perform in various shows, and leads classes and workshops. You can find his information at www.bxlloyd.com. Benjamin, it is such a wonderful pleasure to have you here talking to us about how improv has influenced your journey with children, maybe parenting, maybe training, maybe both. So I want to start off with, can you tell me how you interact with kids and in what way improv has influenced those interactions?
Yeah. First of all, I love interacting with kids. I feel like being a parent is one of the great gifts in my life. Yeah. And so how do I interact with kids? I think one of the things is I don't assume that they're not equal to me in any way. So I approach kids as an equal. And if I ask a question, I'm asking it out of a sense of play and curiosity, but it's authentic. One of the things that I dislike a lot is the tone of voice some people get when they interact with children, which is just, to me, it's like, I even remember as a child myself recognizing that tone of voice and thinking like, you're full of shit, man.
Yeah. And a kid can pick up on that instantly.
Yeah. So I feel like it's sort of a genuine curiosity that hopefully leads to an authentic connection.
So I guess then that leads to, what's your priority when you are interacting with kids? What are you trying to achieve, if you're trying to achieve anything?
Well, context is everything in that question. If I'm a teacher, and I have taught young people, I've taught children as young as 6 or 7, up through teenagers. I mean, most of my teaching experiences with young adults. So context is everything with, I feel like, in a teaching context, there's always there's an agenda, there's a goal. And so the way I'm interacting with young people, with kids in that context has to do with what the goal is. Usually there's a multitude of goals. Preserving a safe space for the class, gathering attention around an idea or a concept or a project, trying to make sure everyone's included. I mean, these are like gigantic, anyone who's a teacher will tell you, like, the effort is extraordinary, right? One-on-one, again, I just go back to like, I'm not interested in talking down to anybody, so I also feel like it can be startling for the child when they sense that the adult is actually asking them a genuine question without any sort of fake sort of sing-songy attitude about it. It really it's an effective way to get a kid's attention, to be like, hey, I'm talking to you person to person here. Like every time you scream, nobody can get anything done. So what do you think we should do about that? Yeah. So I think it depends on what my goal or my agenda. If I don't have a goal or an agenda, like if it's just sort of a playful encounter at a party or a playground or something like that, I'm just listening, I just want to find out, like, what are you about? Like, what's interesting to you? And of course, with a kid, like, you'll go on the most amazing journey. Like, they'll show you a pebble or a flower or a piece of grass or something, and it's just a wonderful little journey that you get to go on.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're coming at it from a place of curiosity, an authentic connection with that individual at a level of peer, if I captured that right.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It doesn't always work out that way, but that's the ideal. Yeah.
Yeah. And have most of your interactions been in the teaching or in the sort of circumstance of being at a park or something like that? Or has there been a parenting journey that you've been on as well?
Oh yeah, I have 2 kids. So it's a very elaborate journey. For a long time, my encounters with other kids were through them, through them and through their friends. And that's an interesting conversation too about what are other parents' expectations? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Let's go down that rabbit hole a little bit. What was that like in terms of interacting with other parents while interacting with their kids? And how did you sort of balance that?
Yeah. Mostly it's when a friend of one of my children's, when they were little, was a total pain in the ass and was driving me crazy. And so I had to decide, am I going to turn on the discipline and the authoritarian voice with this child of my friend? And then just like, what if they go back home and they're like, Griffin's dad was really mean to me?
Yeah.
I just have to be ready to have that conversation. Yeah, and I think also, but it offers an interesting opportunity for your own child to see you apply the rules to everybody. So it's not just like dad's a pain in the ass about, not interrupting people, but he's a pain in the ass with everybody about that. So,
so it's not just me. Yeah.
Right. So I think that can be useful too.
And was improv at all a role in that journey? And if so, can you talk a little bit about that?
For better or for worse, I dropped into improv deeply in around 2007, 2008. And at that time, I have to do some math here. One of my kids was 9 or 10, and the other one was like 5 or 6. So before that time, I wasn't thinking about improv. I mean, as a professional actor and a teacher of acting, it had obviously been a part of my own training and my own experience in a variety of ways, but never as a standalone genre until like 2007, 2008, when I kind of became obsessed with it. I never had like the conscious thought, ooh, I should apply this in my parenting, except around yes and, the concept of yes and realized that yes and is not always an affecting parenting tool. It is sometimes, but there are times when it's just, you want to yes and, but just for a sense of like sort of safety and consistency, you just can't,
I would love to hear about times where it did work and times where it's like, no, this isn't the right tool.
I think it works better the older they get. As my kids became tweens and teens, we would have discussions about conduct, manners, and sort of agreements about the way we communicate. And in those situations, I might get hit with a face full of, you have to respect my privacy all the time. Yes, and I need to protect you. And so sometimes that means I get to sort of break your realm of privacy if I'm worried about you. So I'm not saying like, I'm not denying that your privacy is super important and is to be treasured and valued and respected. I'm also just adding to that, I have another job as your parent, which is, has to do with protecting you.
Is it hard to find that balance between my responsibility for safety and I want to give you all the agency you need and I want to support you in that process?
Oh yeah. And I mean, I think that's not even really an improv question. That's just like, like parenting 101, and we're not even beginning to talk about emotions yet.
Yeah.
So, I think with all of this conversation about the way improv may or may not affect or improve or support your parenting, it has to be acknowledged. Like sometimes you're stressed, anxious, or your kid just pisses you off because they're being an asshole, and you lose your temper, and or you have to bring the hammer down in some way, and hopefully that is a learning experience ultimately, where afterwards you can unpack it and say, I'm sorry I lost my temper, but you were really pushing my buttons, and this is how. I think it's it sort of yes and improv approach to parenting lives in an ideal world that we aspire to, but we have to not beat ourselves up when we're like, just no, because I say so. No.
Yeah. Let me ask you about your journey. You said you were an actor before you got into improv. What was the journey growing up in terms of playfulness, in terms of interaction, say with your parents, and what led you into acting in the first place? Was it based on those interactions, or is it something else?
My mother left my father and me when I was around 3 to basically go and be a modern dancer in the 60s.
Wow.
And I was raised in all sort of practical ways by my dad. And so my mother was this extraordinarily creative and also, by the way, an improviser in the world of modern dance and dance theater. She was a part of a group that many people who have a sense or a history of avant-garde performing arts know about, and that group is called the Grand Union. And my mother was a part of it, and kind of famous artists in this realm, David Gordon and Yvonne Rainer and other people whose names I'm forgetting now. So I grew up watching my mother perform and having a real love-hate relationship to it. On the one hand, it was like, she's amazing. That's amazing. On the other hand, it was like, this is what she chose over me.
Wow.
My dad, on the other hand, became, sort of modeled for me the sort of Superman dad character. Like I will just basically make sure that everything is taken care of, and to his own great detriment, and his parenting was imperfect, although it was completely dependable. I never doubted for a moment that he was going to take care of me. You know what I mean? I never doubted for a moment that he was going to stay with me. Along the way, it was pretty rough. He went through a series of marriages that didn't work. And then he had a new family that grew up around me, and that was confusing as hell as well. So where am I going with all this? I discovered acting when I was in 7th grade, and I was instantly good at it for reasons that I didn't understand. And it's taken me years of therapy and years in the recovery movement to realize that I had discovered that love was a performance-based reward.
And so you knew how to perform.
In order to be loved.
Yeah. Wow.
Deeply damaging relationship to the concept of love. Deeply damaging.
I imagine.
But I discovered that I could actually that I could turn it into this pastime that later became my career. And along the way, I discovered that I was also an addict and an alcoholic. And all of those parts of my life were a part of my relationship to performance. It was an escape. Performance for a long time was an escape because I found my real life existence to be intolerable in different ways. And I also was desperately alone, and I found my island of misfit toys, drama geeks, and I found my tribe.
Yeah.
And I was devoted to it, and I formed an identity around it. And both of my kids grew up backstage too. I was a professional actor. Their mother is a professional actor. So they were coming to rehearsals. They were hanging out in dressing rooms and green rooms. In some ways, I was trying to marry the mother and the father that I had in sort of one person in myself, being the sort of consistent, reliable dad, but also the performer, That's why I wish one of them was here, because I'm sure they've got I would love to hear them talk about what it was like seeing their parents on stage,
Well, maybe at a future point we could have an interview with you and at least one of your kids, if you'd be open to that. And so then you said your kids were at least already along in 8 and 5 or something like that when you got into improv initially. Did you at any point recognize a change in the way you interacted with your kids after that point?
Only in retrospect. And I guess what I want to say is that I believe that improv affected my parenting in ways that I wasn't aware of at the time.
Yeah.
But now, through having conversations like this, I can go, oh no, there was a shift. There was a change.
Yeah.
Part of it was that improv doesn't specify an outcome. When you and I are improvising together, we don't have any idea what the end point is, where it's going.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe at some point that part of our brain, that storytelling part of our brain goes, oh, it would be cool if, right? But then,
Yeah.
I mean, who knows, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that sunk in deeply for me in terms of the way I related to my kids to some extent. And I was able to release to some extent my need to have the outcome occur that I fantasized or desired, and instead be able to just kind of be present with whatever it was that was happening in that moment and try and let go of my desired outcome, which as a parent is almost impossible.
It's very hard. Yeah.
Let's be honest, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes it's even unwise, I believe. Like you need to have like, no, I know that you're high right now, and I'm not letting you leave the house because I'm afraid you'll hurt yourself or somebody else, right?
Yeah.
It gets really tricky when drugs and alcohol get involved. And I've been down that road as well. So it definitely did affect my parenting, but in ways that I wasn't aware of at the time, I think.
Yeah. Are there other ways as well? Because you really specifically mentioned safety there, which it seems to have been a theme. How did it positively impact your parenting or your relationship with your kids?
I mean, I've always been supportive of any creative enterprise that either of them was interested in doing, without condition, really. Both of my kids went through like 4 or 5 different musical instruments, and neither of them play a musical instrument now.
Yeah, they're just trying them out.
Just trying them out. And then we were like, okay, we'll go rent a violin somewhere, and that was agony for a while. But and I guess I'm thinking about playfulness now, and I'm wondering, like, did improv affect the way I related to them with playfulness? I think I was a playful parent before I discovered improv, honestly. My older son and I used to love to pretend to play football in our yard. It was just boy stuff, for lack of, conventional boy stuff, running around and wrestling and tackling and scoring touchdowns and doing silly dances and stuff like that. And that was great. And my younger child is a trans, non-binary person, and they were assigned female at birth. And so when they had that designation, we would do all sorts of like girly stuff together with just fantasy play, They got really interested in Beauty and the Beast for a while, and so they wanted me to be the Beast. So we do all sorts of Beauty and the Beast improvs together and stuff like that. So I like to believe, and though this is where you need to talk to them about it, that both Susan, my ex, and I created an imaginative and playful home life for a while until it started falling apart and getting stressful. So,
and something you mentioned is about being in the moment and not having a specific outcome that you're looking for. Was that something that you sort of knew and understood before you went into improv, or did improv give you that, this actually is a useful methodology for these interactions?
Yeah, I think I knew and I understood it intuitively as an actor.
Yeah.
The idea of being in the moment is not unique to improv, Improv gave me a language and sort of a creative architecture for really investing in and exploring what that feels like and what that leads to, that moment-to-moment listening and attentiveness, I don't think I was an experienced enough improviser at the time. And also, my discovery of improv coincided with the dissolution of my marriage and my home life.
Okay.
So there were a lot of other tensions and stressors going on. Within 5 years, my younger child began to transition, and that was a journey, So I think there was a lot of intuitive stuff that I think both Susan and I brought to the parenting journey, and then improv kind of gave me a vocabulary for it.
That's useful in terms of being able to discuss it and to talk about what's inside, but you don't know how to express it in a way. Was it at all useful in terms of diffusing situations, either between you and sounds like your ex-wife now, or you and your kids, as they sometimes challenged or were challenged in life?
I think so. I think improv leads to a kind of mindfulness training, ideally, where we become aware of what we're feeling. Because when we're improvising, we're looking for those cues or those impulses to take us in a new direction or to lead to a new choice or a new offer. So I like to believe that to some extent, I was able at least to delay my emotional response to challenging encounters because I was able to go, wow, this is really triggering me. I'm feeling very activated right now. I'm going to choose to breathe and just stay present with it. I would say that worked 50% of the time.
That's 50 more than you had before, right? Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. And I think improv had something to do with that. I think one of the things that, because I discovered improv at a very challenging period in my life, one of the things that that improv helped with was not fixating on not catastrophizing, because what improv teaches me again and again is I don't know the outcome. I don't know the outcome. And so anxiety is born out of the delusion that I do know the outcome and it's really, really bad.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so improv helped me go, I actually don't know the outcome.
Yeah.
I'm in this moment now. It's really hard. It's really challenging, but I don't know the outcome.
It sounds like there have been many challenges along the way and a lot of self-discovery as well as familial discovery. As you went, my focus being on improv, but I think it's sort of a secondary thing to a lot of your experience. It's something that fed into it later in the journey. But looking back on it, you talked about how at the time you didn't recognize its influence, but looking back, you see some influences, particularly in terms of letting go, being in the moment, not having an agenda, and just sort of focusing on the relationship and what's the interaction.
Yeah.
If you were to talk to your very early parenting self, the man who first heard that your wife was pregnant with your son, what would you tell that self in terms of what you've learned since then to try to make his experience easier?
I guess it would come down to various versions of let go of your attempt to control.
Mm-hmm.
Let go of your need to control, because it's a waste of energy and it pisses everybody else off. And it's one of the great parenting paradoxes and challenges. There's no other journey where controlling the outcome is more important than when you're raising a child. And so having to internalize the reality that you can't is arduous. It's an arduous journey to take, but it would be versions of that.
Yeah. Arduous, but essential. That's a fascinating place to put someone who's just starting on that journey. Is it's going to be really hard, but the essential thing for you to do is to let go of the outcome.
Or, it's okay to have an outcome in mind.
Uh-huh.
And it's okay to try to design an experience that is pointing towards that outcome. Yeah. Just realize that you're not in control of whether or not you actually get there.
Yeah.
There's a million other things that are going to happen that will prevent you from getting there. Yeah. From the car breaking down to your kid telling you that they're actually not the right gender. Any number of things, and you have no control over those things. Yeah. So the best thing you can do is to be the best version of yourself in those moments when they arise, as opposed to saying, God damn it, that's not the outcome I wanted. This is all shit. I hate this,
So you don't fight the reality. You accept the reality. Yeah.
What a waste of time.
Right? Yeah. Because you're not going to get anywhere with that.
That's where the beauty is too.
Yes.
That's where the revelation is.
Yeah.
It's in the reality. It's in what's actually happening.
It's saying yes to reality. Yeah.
Not in some fucked up version of what I want in my head. which I'm really good at generating. But the magic and the love and the despair and the transformation is in what's actually happening. My mother has a card over her sink. She's a practicing Buddhist and has been for many years. And it simply says, "This very moment is always the occasion."
I love it. Yes. And it's the only one you got. Yeah. There's no real future. There's no past. The only thing you have is now. Yeah.
Nope. And improv is an extraordinary way to help us practice being in this very moment.
Yes. And if you could do that with your kids, wherever they are and what moment you're in with them, and you can have that relationship.
What a thing to hear your kids say when they're an adult. "I always knew that dad was right there with me. I always knew that my dad was really present."
Yeah.
I would love to hear my kids say that.
Yeah, that would make my heart feel good. Definitely.
They won't, because I wasn't, but it'd be nice if they said that.
But I think it's one of those things it's an aspirational thing to be like, how can I be present now?
Mm-hmm.
And what did they just offer me? And how do I accept that and say, now let me give them presence back. Let me give them an offer back that allows us to have that connection.
Because remember, for better or for worse, your kids are going to imitate you.
Yeah.
It's a horrifying truth.
In some ways it is.
Look, all the ways my kids piss me off, they learned it from me.
Exactly.
They learned it I taught them how to behave that way, or their mom, right? So, but still, and let's be honest, they have their own specific, beautiful, infuriating personalities that just come from God or whatever. But if you're able to model being present with your kid, then maybe they'll be able to somehow internalize that, take it with them. And I actually believe that both of my kids are extraordinary listeners. Both of them are. And I've heard other people say this about them. They're both amazing listeners and amazing companions and friends. And I think part of that was the way that Susan and I, were able to create a home for them that where listening and being authentic and attentive was held in very high regard.
What a blessing for them, and for then the world that they're going to help listen to and then help through whatever experiences occur. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you for you and Susan providing that for them and as role models.
Yeah, we had our moments.
Well, Benjamin, thank you so much for this conversation, for your openness and your sincerity, the vulnerability you offered here. I did not expect that, and I greatly appreciate it. So thank you for opening up like that. Anything you would like to add or specifically mention about yourself, your work, anything like that?
Well, I'm preaching to the choir here, but I believe that improv, I'm an applied improviser as well as being a for fun improviser. So my business is human resources consulting and learning and development, designing learning and development experiences for groups and teams. And improv is at the center of that profession for me. And part of it is my belief that what we learn from improv can make the world a better place, can make, our cultures healthier. So, let's just find ways that we can bring it in every aspect of our lives.
Absolutely. Yes, you are preaching to the choir on that. I wholly subscribe to that belief. We can create a lot better people if we just have decent relationships, respect each other, meet each other where we are, and say, what can we do together? Yeah. Absolutely wonderful, Benjamin. Thank you so much.